is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Master Crafted. It is your boy Lane and Phil, and we got Jason back. Today we are talking about Marines again. We are doing another detachment declassified. We're covering some of the other things from the book we did not get to in the first part. So, Phil, what are the detachments we're going to be going over today?
We're going to go over 3 more detachments, so we still have a few more to cover all of the Space Marine ones, but we're going to hit 3 more big ones that are used quite often. We're going to go over Gladius, then we're going to go over Stormlance, and then we're going to round it out with Vanguard.
Awesome. Yeah, it should be hopefully pretty insightful. We've gotten a little better at this. We're a little quicker at this. We're going to hit you with what you need to know. Jason, let's get started. All right, going into Gladius, you know, the classic just from the beginning of 10th has kind of been the go-to for most players. It's not as much now, but it definitely was for quite a while. What do we need to know about Gladius?
I think first off, what we need to know is that for newer players and people new to the game, Gladius is the perfect detachment. When I started playing it, I would say to opponents at the beginning of 10th, like, I'm not that great of a player. So, especially at that time, I'd say I'm not that great of a player, but Gladius gives me the answers to the problems I've created for myself. And really, the way it does that is its army rule. Gladius gives you doctrines, and the way those doctrines work is at the start of your command phase, you can pick the Devastator Doctrine, the Assault Doctrine, Tactical Doctrine, and all that means is Devastator, your whole army gets advance and shoot. Assault, your whole army gets advance and charge, and Tactical, you get fall back and behave normally. And that's really the power of it. You can get yourself into a sticky situation and start, readjusting your movement, and movement wins games. So
You do have
that's
one more
really the
thing,
start.
fall back and shoot as well.
Fall back and behave normally. Like do it all for sure. Yeah. And that's it. We've got a couple powerful enhancements in Gladius. We used to have the S tier fire discipline, put yourself in a tactical, or just to reiterate, all of Gladius goes back to the doctrines. You get more from being in a certain doctrine with your enhancements and stratagems. Fire discipline used to be you get sustained hits, and then if you're in Devastator Doctrine, you'd get sustained hit or crit hits on 5s on top of that. So there were a lot of combos you could do to just put out like an egregious amount of firepower with that. But now that ship has sailed. We've gone from S tier with fire discipline, and now the stratagem's gone up to 4 or remained at 40 points. It was still broken at 40 points, so then they changed the rule. It's now just sustained hits and reroll advances in Devastator, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, it's nowhere near what it was. Now it's slap Lieutenant Titus in there if you're looking for something like that. For 30 more points, you get a powerhouse of a character. Yeah, but moving on, we've got the other one. I'd say there's 2 more right now that are decent. If you got the 10 points to spare, Artificer Armor is never a bad call. I think with most attachments, you can kind of just throw a Captain and Gravis armor with a certain enhancement on him, and him by himself is a decent kind of pain in the butt to deal with. But Artificer armor gives you a 2+ save and a 5+ feel no pain. And like I said, with the Gravis Captain, now he goes to 2+ save, 5+ feel no pain, half damage. He's T6 and he has 6 wounds, I'm pretty sure. So he's a candidate for if you want to skew into that. But if you have 10 points, I mean, giving your lone op lieutenant a 2-up save is not a bad call. And then maybe even better than that, Honor Vehement. Right now, it's usually used on Justiciars and Captains for 15 points. Gives you +1 attack and strength. And then if you're in the Assault Doctrine, it's going to give you +2 to your attack and strength. And that's when you do your Super Scion Captain. You go in, you pop that, put yourself in an Assault, you pop his, 3 more attacks and devastating wounds, and you just go to town. But those are the enhancements. But yeah, we can move on to the strats then. With strats, that's really where Gladius comes alive. I'd say the number 1 strat is Adaptive Strategy. No pun intended. So with Adaptive Strategy, it's 1 CP, and you could put any unit in any one of your doctrines. And that really is like, you send something into skirmish, your whole army needs to be in Devastator to advance and shoot right now, but you need to fall out with your 1 unit you sent into skirmish and it lived. and then you fall out and re-engage. And that's one of the strongest of Gladius right now. On top of that, squad tactics is another strong one that kind of goes hand in hand with that. Just more flexibility, leaning into the flexibility of Gladius and your movement shenanigans. Squad tactics gives your infantry D6 reactive move when someone comes in within 9. And then in true Gladius fashion, something else, if you're in tactical, you get a 6-inch reactive move. But
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's 2 stratagems that for what you said for a newer player means that you're not necessarily going to get trapped very often, right? Like
right.
you could get bailed out of bad decisions or decisions where like maybe your goal didn't come to fruition, like when you charged into that unit or you got heroicked into, and instead of being tied up and now that unit is like worthless, you still have the opportunities to play the game in a really positive way.
Yeah, absolutely. And that it's going to give you those forgiving moments and also teach you more about, how to position without punishing you. You can, oh, my tank, I didn't quite, ask for my range or measure it out when I deployed. I can't quite get the line I thought I could get. I'm going to pop this Repulsor Executioner into Devastator Doctrine, get that 1 or 2 inches that I really needed to be able to pull that line. And yeah, the Gladius is all about the movement, and those two, yeah, for sure, pull you out of those sticky situations. I mispositioned my units, and now I can react and still play the game without getting punished, is really the theme of everything we've talked about so far. And then really the rest of Gladius is I'm just going to be a little bit more effective. We have a shooting strat. If I want to be a little bit more effective in shooting, I can give my unit, whatever I'm shooting, it ignores cover, or the unit I'm shooting, the tag ignores cover. And then if I'm in Devastator, because we're still on Gladius, minus an additional AP on my weapons. So I hit a little harder. It punches through a little better if I need it. Or we have the same for combat with Honor of the Chapter. You get Lance on your unit. And then additionally, if you're in Assault Doctrine, which is the combat doctrine, you get another AP on your weapon. So that's really the rest of Gladius. And then the last, and which certainly isn't the least, for 2 CP, you get a for sure fight on death. And that is one of the biggest arguments for Gladius right now for a seasoned player, somebody who is not going to get themselves in such sticky situations and wants still a little flexibility. But on top of that, the fight on death for sure is one of Gladius's strongest stratagems. So one of the reasons you bring it, it gives your, trading unit, like an assault intercessor unit with a captain or something that you already send in, you pop the Honor Vehement, you trade it on the objective, you reroll it on the objective, they send a unit in to fight you, and now you can trade effectively and kind of get 2 for 1 on that, on units like that. And that really is Gladius. It gives you everything. It gives you a little more movement, get yourself out of sticky situations, flexibility on those sticky situations. Oh, I need to dial up my effectiveness on certain units with Honor of the Chapter and Storm of Fire. And then, maybe once I really get used to the teeth of Gladius, I can figure out how to trade pretty much twice with 1 unit with the fight on death, only in death. So
No, definitely a lot of tools for sure.
The tools, yeah.
Yeah, it is a good detachment. I'm curious, right? Like, I've played against Gladius a few times throughout 10th edition. It has been a very popular detachment. If you had to pick, like, the mandatory units, that you're like, if I'm running Gladius, I have to find ways to get it in there, what would be those mandatory units for you?
Mandatory units right now, again, that's a strange question at the time we're in with Marines because of our depth. It's more the mandatory units kind of stay the same for most detachments, except there's some flavor in Gladius. I do like the Assault Intercessor with the Captain in Gladius. I think that's really good. I think the fight on death really takes those units to another level. I think most of your shooting platforms do really well, but they kind of took away our ability to shoot with our infantry with the change of Storm of Fire. I mean, Eradicators are still good, but they're good in everything. Hellblasters are all right, but they're all right in everything. The big one for me would be that, or I don't know. It's really flavor of the week, whatever you want to pick still. And the big ones that are good in every detachment, but are maybe shine a little brighter in Gladius. Ballistic Dreadnoughts, Vindicators, if you can fit them in, put them in. Like the Vindicators getting an additional AP1 ignores cover, just going to erase anything now. And then Ballistic Dreadnoughts having the movement flexibility from Gladius is especially good. They only move 8. They're a big clunky vehicle. You kind of want to hide them in, in deployment and then be able to get around and move laterally. The advance and shoot really helps those 2 units for sure.
Yeah. And when we were talking last time, you said if you have Marnius and a company of heroes, you might as well throw them in anything. This is the one where they probably benefit the least from your detachment rule, but it does not take away from just how good they still are to put them in a list like this.
No, actually, yeah, and I agree. The great thing about Marnius too, we'll get into the weeds of it, why the massive list of why it's the maybe my favorite unit in Space Marines for sure, is he gives you the added flexibility where you no longer need to worry about controlling him. Like you can do all of your tricks and pay attention to your tricks and give him a reactive move if you want, if that works out for you. But you can concentrate on making sure the rest of your army is working in the way you intend and, getting it out of sticky situations. And then Marius can still just do his thing and be just fine, with pretty much all doctrines all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So
also giving you that additional CP at the same time.
And the additional CP does. Yeah. Play the tricks. Yeah.
Yeah. So for those that are wanting Space Marines, if you were like, this is going to be the first detachment you ever run in Space Marines, this is probably it. Before you branch out to maybe a specialist detachment or anything like that, if you're going to maybe even teach someone the game, this might not be an awful detachment to get their first game in at 2,000 points. If we're going to run, like, obviously we would start them and recommend you starting under 2,000 because it is a lot of rules and stuff like that. But if you're running Space Marines and like you're getting into your first couple of games of 2,000 points, wouldn't be the worst idea to run Gladius a couple times because it does have those tools for you.
Absolutely. The other thing too is Gladius is forgiving for beginners, but when Gladius is ran by somebody who is at mastery of the game level, like Gladius is, art. It gives you everything. So the people, it's not a beginner detachment. It's just more beginner friendly because of the reason stated. But you can continue to use Gladius. You could run Gladius as Space Marines your entire career and do better and better and better with it. It's never going to fall short, really. It covers all your bases for Warhammer. So it's almost misleading to say it's a beginner detachment. It's beginner friendly, but it can be ran at the highest level. And once you unlock the higher level of Gladius and it's ran at its highest level, it's a impressive detachment for sure.
Yeah, very, very high, skill floor, but also very high skill ceiling for sure.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next one, which is Stormlance, something that we've discussed quite a bit. I actually have a lot of experience playing against. The main detachment rule is a lightning assault. Adeptus Astartes from your unit are eligible to declare a charge in a turn which they advanced or fell back. So they get one part. They get one part of the doctrines that are in Gladius, but they get it all the time, no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Pretty solid.
Pretty solid. It has a little more depth. Stormlance right now, I have my hot takes on it. I think it's a really good detachment. Maybe some people don't agree with me. It was good in Wolf Jail, but now that we gave Marines the +1 to wound, if you're running Gilliman, I would really look at, and you have the experience of Gladius, I would really look at and take Stormlance seriously because I think it gives you the same, but even better on the tricks. I'll clarify that immediately. One big reason for it is in Gladius, your reactive move is D6 inches unless you are in the certain doctrine, but it's only on infantry. And now we have a reactive move of 6 inches in Stormlance on anything. And that's one of the biggest reasons for it. Additionally, Marines don't need help being more effective right now on what they want to kill. They're pretty dang good at killing things. It's not really their problem. Killing things is not Marines' problem. It's, your unit cost and being more elite and positioned correctly, but it's not killing things usually right now. So the help from Gladius to kill things is not as needed right now. But yeah, we'll dial back. We'll go back to enhancements. And I think in a lot of detachments, you have either great strats or great enhancements. And I think Stormlance is one that fell away on the enhancement side. They've got their enhancements. If you got the points, you put it on, but I don't see any of them needing to be like, you have to have it in the list. Yeah. There's no auto includes in it. Yeah.
So we've got Fury the Storm, which is improve the strength and armor pen by 1, but if it ended a charge move, it's strength and armor pen by 2. That's probably one that you're talking about. That doesn't feel awesome.
Yeah, and it's 25 points.
Yeah,
rough.
That's pretty expensive for something that I would rather spend those points elsewhere.
Yep. Next, Portents of Wisdom. Adeptus Astartes model only while the bear is leading a unit. You could reroll advance rolls for that unit for 15 points. Feels you know.
If you got it, like,
yeah,
you know, and you have this assault unit that you really want to get into combat, like, sure, like, you could, you know, throw it on.
15
Why not?
points, as long as it's a durable unit, I'd probably be okay with it. I'd like to see it used twice at least.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And same with Painting Withdrawal, which is the next one, fall back and shoot. Now this fixes a big problem with this attachment. You have no access to fall back and shoot in this attachment except for Feigning Withdrawal, which is a pretty big point for it. But like iterated earlier, they've kind of taken away our ability to use infantry effectively for the most part, for as far as like tank killing, especially. And we don't have any problem with killing anything except tanks. Might be our, like, how are we killing tanks? So the problem with it being on infantry is if you're putting your shooting in this attachment into infantry, your infantry is not durable enough. Most things can just kill your infantry. So if you can find a spot for it, this is the one, I think. And if you're making a plan for it, fall back and shoot is what you're missing right now. But same point, if you're running infantry, you're probably going to run, I don't know, maybe it's Hellblasters or Eradicators. Eradicators don't have access to it, so go ahead and throw Feigning Withdrawal on them. Hopefully you get another activation out of them. But if you're running Hellblasters, you're probably throwing a Lieutenant on there for the lethal hits anyway. So Feigning Withdrawal, like, if you're bringing a character, you're bringing a Lieutenant. Probably.
What if you were to run, like, what if you had like an aggressor brick with an apothecary, and then you were to put the Feigning Withdrawal on there?
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, that was like my initial thought. They're tough enough that they could survive the majority of combat. They do have power fists, right? They're no joke. And then them falling back and being able to shoot would be nice.
Yeah, I could see it. I think if you're building your list around an aggressor blob, you have your delivery figured out, you know how you're going to use them, and you're planning on having aggressors, like, absolutely, this would be amazing. Because then, yeah, you can get that full activation out of them again. You can get not only the combat, but, you know, the fallback and charge, but you also have fallback and shoot. Yeah, I think aggressors probably would be a great one. It's just, if you got to say it's
a 10-point insurance policy, really.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
is a great way to look at it. They got locked up for a little bit. We now get a, you know, fallback, shoot, charge back in, sure, and do the whole thing. So very nice to have for 10 points.
Yeah. And then last we have Hunter's Instincts. You can bring a mounted unit in one turn earlier from strat reserves for 25 points. Rough. Like, maybe you have an idea, but a lot of that stuff is kind of a trap right now in Warhammer. I think, especially in Marines, like Dark Angels have something similar with their Deathwing Knights can come in on turn 1, and it's kind of where are you putting them? Especially from strat reserves being on a board edge. You don't even have deep strike, so I think that's a little rough. I don't see this one almost ever.
Just starting off super early, the trade game, throwing expensive units or characters out early, that's not something we should be doing, Jason?
I don't know. And maybe there's an argument for it in something like, nope, there's no argument for it. Never mind. I got nothing.
Yeah, well, that is fair. Moving on to stratagems, obviously, Armor of Contempt's in there, same as any other Marine detachment. First, we can talk about Shock Assault in your charge phase. Until the end of the turn, you can reroll charge rolls made for your unit, and melee weapons equipped by those models have the Lance ability. That seems pretty good.
super good. I think it's for mounted units only, if I'm not
It
mistaken.
is. It is for mounted.
Yeah.
I did.
So like, can be really good. Outriders are a solid choice right now at 80 points. You get that +1 to strength, +1 to damage on Outriders. They move super fast. They have additional stratagem support in this detachment. If you're running Outriders, yeah, it's solid. Solid. You could throw 2 Outrider units now and get +1 to wound on both. You'd have your Oath unit, and then you'd have your unit that doesn't have Oath, and you still would have your +1 to wound reliably. And so, yeah, I think Shock Assault's good. Outriders are, I think, great right now. I think the only reason we're not seeing them more is maybe some people haven't gotten them and painted them up,
Well, I think their biggest drawback, unfortunately, is that their footprint is
Footprints.
very large. Like, those bases are huge, the models are huge. And if we talk about the fact that they can't go through walls or anything like that they do have quite a bit of movement, they can get around, and with advance and charge, they are a relative threat. And when they do get in combat, it is quite easy to get, like, if you're running squads of 3, to get all 3 in combat.
Mhm.
They are relatively priced, and when you're rerolling all hits and +1 to wound, like with Oath, it's not awful. And honestly, with the amount of stratagem support, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. But we'll talk about
Yeah,
your Stormlance list, because I don't know how many Outriders you're running.
I think you run 1 unit of them. They're a great trading unit. And then if you give people the threat range talk of like, you've got another stratagem in here, I'll go over real quick. Full throttle. It's 2 CP, so it's a little rough for investment. That's why you're running Gilliman. Make it the 1 CP. And now you got non-walker vehicles go 6 inches, I'm pretty sure. And then your Outriders can now go 9 inches. And so now you kind of have hopefully solved some of that. And you're going to be like, I got the 21-inch move before I even charge, talk with people. Like I can be there wherever I need to be, and there's a lot of threat potential there. And even, you don't even need to charge people with that. I think one of their greatest strengths is their footprint. And their conga line you can make with an Outrider squad for 80 points with that kind of movement. You can jail someone for a turn pretty reliably, jail a vehicle, block movement with that unit. I think that's probably the biggest strength of that stratagem in my mind, is throwing an Outrider unit 21 inches and being like, you stay in this spot for now, Yeah. And then if they survive, on top of that, we have ride hard, ride fast, which they won't survive. Let's be honest. But 4 wounds apiece, I mean, maybe if you put them, maybe they have to dedicate to it, or maybe you can make them dedicate 2 things to killing Outriders. Should be pretty good with ride hard, ride fast. And it's 1 CP, flying and mounted units get -1 to hit, -1 to wound when being shot at. Like, it gives them a little bit more survivability. And at 4 wounds apiece, like, pretty good on Outriders, but there's probably better things to spend this on. I know some people are running, what is it, Storm Eagle gunship. They're throwing that on, throwing -1 hit, -1 wound on that, and that is terrible. And then your speeders right now. Speeders are great in Marines. The Hammer Strike is great. It's got great guns, especially with the +1 to wound. Gives you ignores cover. I think it shines in this detachment. And then additionally, you can get the -1 to hit, -1 to wound. Really shines in this detachment with that, and probably one of the best uses for it, getting another activation out of that speeder.
No, I like
Yeah.
ride hard, ride fast. Like, cooking something up on the side, outside of Genes to a Cult, because I'm looking for a little bit of variety, a little bit of spice in my life. And
There you go.
Storm Speeders is something that I've been looking at for my Space Marines. And I've definitely played it a few times, and I really like them. They have so much value, and they're
Man.
relatively priced. And I'm not running it in this detachment, but I can
Are
see
you
it.
running 9 of them?
I'm not.
You're bringing
No,
the whole house?
no, I'm not.
They're
I'm
great,
running
though.
1.
1. Yep. Ah, yuck. No, I think they're great. I think right now they can do the same thing that was just talked about too. They're kind of a durable body that is, you have to dedicate something to kill them. You can't just plink fire them down. And so even just their footprint, you can bring them in, you could shoot them and then be like, okay, well, next turn in something like this, maybe I put that, 6-inch advance on them. And I just yeet it in your face, and I can move block with this decent sized base that can go 18 inches, you know. Or
I
no,
mean, that
20
a
inches. Yeah.
Storm Raven gunship, I get it. Like I've seen people use dreadnoughts in those and just be happy with like, you kill this and now I'm gonna drop a dreadnought out of it. Now I'm not necessarily happy with any of the dreadnoughts right now. Ballistas are okay because they're so cheap, but Redemptors, I don't think maintain their value very well, and Brutalis are. I want them to be good so bad, but
I think they're all right in this. I
I
think
would
they're
not.
okay.
I,
I think
I would
if you're
not find
running,
points for them.
I think if you're running the Storm Eagle, you could get away with the Brutalis, and you could like do some tricks and decision things with the Ballistas Brutalis. Like I throw a Brutalis in your face, or I don't, and it just hangs out, and I throw a Ballistas in your face, and it's getting the lines I need. Like Brutalis are sweet. We've had a buddy go to decent acclaim with a couple Brutalis, so
All
I'm
right,
still on that train.
last stratagem. Blitzing Fusillade?
Fusillade, yeah.
Yeah.
So this
What
is
is it?
I
Well, let me read it out.
yeah.
One Adeptus starts from your army that has not been selected to shoot this phase. Until the end of the phase, ranged weapons equipped by the models in your unit have the assault ability. If such a weapon already has this ability until the end of the phase, that weapon has the sustained hits 1 ability as well. Seems kind of solid.
Seems really solid because this is what Gladius lacks is you have to make that choice. You have to make the choice between advance and shoot or advance and charge. And at certain points for your aggressors you talked about, now you can do it both. Now you're Marnius Calgar with these guys, and you can throw them in someone's face, and get both their activations. Additionally, I think bolter inceptors are better still, but like a plasma brick getting sustained hits on top, because going from assault to, if you already have assault, sustained hits, not too bad. And then there's a couple smattering of units that already have assault that are kind of decent. Like intercessors right now are weirdly pretty decent. I think this is the first time that you can make a hard argument for them being your battle line unit you bring. Just getting that little bit extra with the +1 to wound. Maybe you ran a speeder and you give ignores cover with their AP1, and now you give them sustained hits on top of 20 shots. Like you're going to trade trash really effectively. But I think the biggest argument for Stormlance right now is we have +1 to wound. So in Gladius, we don't need the fixing our damage as much. And then, so another reason for Gladius is your reactive move is super strong. Reactive moves have been super strong this whole edition. Now you have a reliable 6-inch reactive move for someone like Gilliman. Gilliman can come out, swing into something at the middle objective, and then be able to move all the way back into safety. I think those are the hard arguments for why you want to look at Stormlance seriously right now. I think it has some teeth, and I know Dark Angels have rotated to it, but I think Marines might do it better right now because of their +1 to wound and Dark Angels.
So what would be some of those, kind of auto-include units, as we talked about with Gladius, some that specifically you're looking at for this detachment?
Yeah, so now that we're being more focused and the units that are getting our buffs in this detachment, I think the speeders are nearly not include. I don't like one speeder, nearly not include. I think one unit of Outriders is really good in this detachment. I think you want to find units maybe like Judiciary and Blade Guard. I'm not super sold on Blade Guard still, but I think they do shine in this detachment with the reactive move and the advancement charge and fallback and charge. I think there's play with that. I think some of those are like a great start. I still think jump pack intercessors are maybe the auto include. I still love them, and in this detachment, they're a great trading piece because you really can get use out of them. But those are some I would start to look at and build an army around, and then something oppressive to use that 6-inch reactive move like a Gilliman piece on giving a reactive move to that, a Land Raider. If you're throwing a Redeemer in someone's face, especially probably in teams, be really effective. Throwing a Redeemer in someone's face, and now you're overwatching and moving 6 inches back when they try to interact with you, or 6 inches forward, whatever. Farther in we go. I think something to really use that Windswift evasion, even though it's gonna be useful every turn, but and then some like speeders, Outriders, getting use out of your advance and charge for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like Outriders, that makes sense. Like, you have so much stratagem support there. The 9-inch auto advance with advance and charge means that threat bubble is so good. And I love the unit. Like, I love the models.
Sure. Yeah.
I'd probably run 2 of them if I'm honest, if I was going to run it in that detachment, just because I
Yep.
think for how cheap they are, and they're relatively tough. Yeah, that makes sense. So if you were to run anything Space Marine wise, you would pick Stormlance.
Man, that's a rough question right now. We've got so much choice right now, but I'm really interested in
You
it right
poor
now.
thing.
I'm for, yeah. Yeah, I mean, the next attachment we're going to talk about is another great one for sure, the Vanguard, but like, yeah, I think Stormlance sounds fun. I played more of a defensive game too, getting into me a little bit for a while and playing on my side of the board and like being reactive. And I really want to go get you now. I want some of that Blood Angels in my life, and I want to just go smack you across the board. I want to stage my army and then just show up like the boogeyman and be like, I'm everywhere. And so I think Stormlance gives you somewhat of that option, but with a better trick than Gladius, with 6-inch on anything. I know that sounds like, oh man, that's not a big difference, but like you roll that one every time on that reactive move for sure. Like you need to get back behind the wall to be in safety. I need 2 inches. I roll the one, and then I'm just okay. Well, and now that you can do it reliably, I think it's great. I think it really shines with Gilliman because giving 2 oaths to something, or giving the 2 oaths is like now your damage is fixed. Like you're fine. You're going to be able to kill 2 things, like for sure. You maybe run some Vindicators, you maybe run some Ballistas, something to be able to threaten downrange. And then, yeah, it doesn't have to be all combat. You actually don't want all combat. And then with Gilliman, he really fixes it. And then he has stratagem support now that's really good for him in this detachment. So that's my hot take on Stormlance for sure.
So is it the best detachment?
No, I don't think any of them are the best detachment anymore, for sure. I think Marines are definitely in the spot where it's no longer about best detachment. You can take the detachment that fits your playstyle the best now, and you'll do well, which is a great place to be.
For sure. All right, we're going to go over the next one, which is Vanguard. And I personally think this is the best attachment. Now, there's a reason for it, and unfortunately, we have the blessing or the curse of playing some of the best Vanguard players in the world. Ben Neal being a local, and Brandon Roddy being a Team USA coach and a very good player. They run up and down Vanguard Space Marines and whatever flavor of the month they decide. And they do things so differently than the majority of other detachments that we've been talking about. They are not the go out and kill you kind of detachment in terms of all the tools that they have, but they make use of some great abilities, enhancements, and stratagems that make them scoring monsters. So Shadow Masters is their detachment rule. Each time a ranged attack targets the stardiest unit from your army, unless the attacking model is within 12, you are -1 to hit, and your target, whatever it is that they're shooting, has the benefit of cover. So even if you're out in the open, you have the benefit of cover, and you're -1 to hit if you're more than 12 inches away.
Pretty good. Pretty strong.
Seems pretty good.
Seems pretty good. Got to be able
Doesn't
to use
jump
it.
off the page, though.
No, and I think the other thing you didn't ask me the best build in Space Marines.
Oh,
and I
okay.
think that's different because there's the best detachment in Space Marines. But if you do not run the correct build in Vanguard, I don't think it shines as well as the
Definitely
others.
not.
Yeah. Yeah. But with Vanguard, I think is the reliably probably the best build in Space Marines right now and has been off and on since John Lennon ran it, right? Like at Worlds, like it's super good. And it's all down to Centurions, right? Which we'll get into, but the uppy downy Centurions and that control of them, holy smokes.
That's
What a
pretty
unit. Pretty good. Pretty good. Before we get into that, should we do enhancements?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I can start us off. We got first
Cool.
the Blade Driven Deep for 25 points. Adeptus Infantry model. While the bear is leading a unit, the models in that unit have the Infiltrate ability. So pretty good. Pretty good to go get a threat up the board nice and early and take up some real estate for sure.
yeah, just reliably be where you want to be with this attachment. Like, you can't get jailed now. You're gonna have, I mean, classically it was Calgar up the board with Eradicators, but now it might be Calgar up the board with company heroes. There's a lot of things that this could just go on to give yourself space and have a threat up the board early. Yeah, it's one of this attachment is not like Stormlance. It's got great enhancements and it's got great strats for sure. Yeah.
I mean, a company of heroes close to the center objective is not fun to deal with. Like, I at least want them to have to walk up there, but the fact that they can start in the terrain, inch off the wall, position perfectly, can be very, very frustrating.
And even worse than that is you watch Ben do it a lot, but sometimes Marnius's job is not to defend the middle objective and play this hiding game, but against the right armies, sometimes it's you roll that 6-ish advance and just send this problem. You deduce whether or not how hard the enemy is gonna, how hard of a time they're gonna have killing Marnius. And they just send this problem in their backlines immediately right off the bat, and they just deal with it. You have to have the experience to know whether or not they're going to have a hard time dealing with. But Ben will do it a lot. He'll just yeet Calgar up the field. First turn, go grab things. I think he did it in LV. He did it against the Gene Stealer Colts in LVO. Yep. And that was a problem all game. And yeah. And this sets it up even better. Now, you do have to add the extra character. So we may be misleading people. I think you can still put the lieutenant in with the company hero blob. I'm pretty sure you can.
You can, because he has the chapter master keyword. So then you can add the lieutenant to that.
Sure. I just wanted to make sure that the lieutenant could go into company heroes still be attached. And I believe they can. Like, yeah, I don't think it's quite necessary for Marnius's blob anymore, but like it's great. Like,
well, he was great. For a time he was running 2 company of heroes, and one of them had the infiltrate, and then the other one had Marnius, and it was just like, okay, well, I got 2 of these incredibly tough reliant units, and one of them's going to infiltrate, and the other one's going to have advance in charge and fall back in charge, and it's just going to be like, it does what it needs.
Not to be a know-it-all, but it actually wasn't infiltrate. It was scout in the impulsor from Sicarius. Captain Sicarius gives you a scout, which is effectively close to the same thing. You're going to end up close to the same position that you wanted to be in with that infiltrate anyway. And so you could have infiltrate and scout on Sicarius's unit and do some crazy stuff there, which I think actually could be a build that with people who can't deal with that, you could just be in their face immediately with a decent unit, or maybe 2 with Marnius. Who knows? Maybe all of a sudden we're sending the house at Vanguard.
Yeah. All right. Well, that enhancement, we just went off on a tangent, but the next one is pretty good. It goes via cloak. It's only 15 points, and it gives the bearer of the unit, bearer of the enhancement, stealth and lone op.
Yep.
One thing, stealth and lone op.
I think right now, again, Ben has figured it out and it's doing it right. He's got a jump back captain with this, and you've got a sticky objective stratagem coming down the line. But the jump back captain can use his free strat. He can rapid ingress. You can rapid ingress a lone op threat. And he's not a threat. He's just going to lone op sticky an objective. Now, it could be the center objective if someone doesn't position correctly to be able to cover it, being that they thought there was no threat on the center. And then, all of a sudden you've stickied it and you're going into your turn now. And I think that's one of the best units or uses of it. There's kind of the meme use again with the Gravis Captain thing. Gravis Captain with lone op is a pain in the butt to deal with. Him alone can, with support nearby, can handle your natural objective pretty well. But yeah, I think Ben's figured it out for that one. I think that's a great use for Ghostweek Cloak, is the lone op being a jump pack captain and using him for deep strike.
I would pay quite a good amount of money to make some of my Custodes characters and dreadnoughts lone op and stealth. So I get the value behind it, definitely.
Yeah, maybe too, if you could flavor it with a Terminator 2 doing the same thing and throwing a Terminator in the right spot. It's just like now he's a hard thing to deal with, and maybe you could throw him in someone's backline or something like that. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, going into the next one, execute and redeploy. Um, this one's the one we don't see too often. I think it's 20 points, pretty rough, and it's
Phobos
just
only.
Phobos only is the big one. It's move, shoot, move, but you're doing that with what, incursors? That's cute, but now you've added a 55 point lieutenant to it, and so you're adding 75 points to incursors. It may probably just better. It is just better to run a second unit of incursors if that's the way you're going to go. And so yeah, we don't see it super often at all. Maybe
This last
eliminators,
one. This last
but
one
this
is
last
the
one
best one. It
is
is
the. I agree with you, Phil. For once, I agree with you. Yeah,
Shadow
yeah,
War Veteran. It's 30 points,
30 points.
but it gives you a Vectora of 12 inches on another unit. Gotta be Phobos only, but it's another unit that gets Vectora.
Yeah. And there's one unit in particular that this goes on in a ton of lists. It's the Lieutenant with Combi Weapon. You've got a reactive move. You've reliably got your Vector where you want it, somewhere near the danger, but now it has a 6-inch reactive move to move it into safety or try to keep it as safe as possible. It's so strong. It's so good. I mean, you could go meme and roll Uriel Ventress, Cal's Assassin, Lonop, or the Lieutenant with Combi Weapon with a Shadow War Veteran and be like, no matter where you are on this board, if you're interacting with me, it's one more CP to do anything. Like, craziness.
Well, he ran that for a time. So did
He did.
Yeah, he ran 3 of them, and that's 36 inches of you will pay an extra CP, which will throw so many lists, so many armies into complete disarray because it's like they don't have the CP for it. They don't have the points to do all of that stuff that they want to do for some of these stratagems that are super important. It's just like, oh, you have 2 CP, you were planning on doing 2 things? Nope, you're doing 1, and there's no way around it because I've literally covered the entire midboard.
Yeah. Or more. Like, yeah, it's like my backfield too. Well, my backfield was already covered too, because I had Centurion devs back there that are covering space and killing you. So that's nice.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So we have 3 good enhancements out of 4. And we already have a good, not great, but I would say really effective detachment rule. But let's get on to stratagems. Obviously, we got Armor of Contempt, so we can just skip over that one. Deadly Prize. Start of the command phase. Adeptus Astartes infantry are mounted within range of an objective marker. It is sabotaged and remains under your control if you have no models within range of it until your opponent controls it. And while an objective marker is sabotaged and under your control, each time an enemy unit ends a normal advance, fallback, or charge within range of that objective marker, roll 1d6. On a 2-up, the unit suffers D3 mortal wounds.
Great. Fantastic. One for the way, I mean, a lot of people do a lot of different things to get early game. I'm going to start sticking things. And if you move on to the objectives, going to do damage. We had Ben's jump back captain for later in the game, or like you have some access to Space Marines have a bunch of access to infiltrating units. That infiltrating unit that you put an enhancement on can now sticky your natural potentially right off the bat. And additionally, it doesn't jump right off the page, but it's worth noting that you do not gain control of an objective till the end of the phase, right? So if somebody's trying to load the mid board every single, or middle objective, every unit that comes on gets that little extra damage. I don't think the mortal wounds are the reason this is good, but it's cute to additionally, be because there are some things that just like, that's gonna doesn't necessarily add up, but it helps. And so it's cute on top of it. But yeah, it's the sticky that just above and beyond. That's great. You no longer need to run intercessors, especially because Marines kind of have a problem of units need to be doing things at the right time, and it's hard to leave a unit if it doesn't have a job like guarding my backfield or whatever. Towards later in the game, I need these units. I run out. So, being able to sticky and move on, amazing.
Yeah. Just as a quick thought, we were talking earlier, right? You said you could give the same unit infiltrate and scout. Yeah. So with that in mind, right, if you just put that unit in the midboard, you could scout onto that objective turn 1 if you go first. Now, stick it and then then just move back into cover and say, okay, well, I still hold that and I didn't even have to risk anything. Like,
Absolutely.
to me, like, that's probably not a combo a lot of people are running, but having that potential, I think, is pretty spicy.
Yeah, that's sweet. And that would be, I mean, you don't need to invest super hard into it because we've got scouts, and scouts can do that combo if need be. But you could be, yeah, I mean, the world's your oyster now with those kind of plays with just this one stratagem. Like it's fantastic.
All right, 1 out of 1 stratagem's pretty good. We'll go on to Strike from the Shadows, shooting phase. Until the end of the phase, each time a model in your unit makes a ranged attack that targets an enemy unit that is more than 12 away, improve the BS, AP characteristics by 1, and if 1 or more enemy models are destroyed as a result of those attacks, that model's units takes a battle shock test.
Yeah, amazing. Bolter Interceptors now are gross with this stratagem. A lot of things are gross with this stratagem, but Bolter Interceptors especially, their biggest weakness is their AP. Other than that, they kill everything, and getting that little extra pip of AP makes them amazing. I mean, it gives you that you can reliably, I think, invest into a 6-man of Bolter Aggressors or Inceptors and be like, these things are going to mulch, and you're going to shoot them. You're not going to use their, for the most part, you're not going to use their 3-inch or now 6-inch, deep strike. You're going to be instead shooting them at their maximum range of 18 inches and just mowing people down with this, hitting on 2s, sustain 2, so now you can reliably pick up all your misses or all of your dice, and just fish for 6s and then get that additional AP on top. And hopefully your AP1 sticks now with the -1 AP. And then Q, we can battle shock as well, which can come into play quite often if you're trying to set up a charge or something like that.
It's pretty good. And on the receiving of that, and a few times, and then watching Ben and Roddy, who played against each other at LVO in one of the final, in a pairing. And that was so interesting to watch because that was the first time I had seen the Bolter Inceptors in this detachment. And watching them with +1 to wound, reroll hits, additional AP, and giving the battle shock and ballistic skill, it was just like, oh my god, is there anything that unit can't pick up? Like, we're talking, like, they're wounding almost everything on 5s. With sustains 2. He's gonna have more shots with all the rerolls. Like,
linked, really
20,
everything.
24.
Yeah.
Like, we're talking about an insane number of additional shots for a unit. Now, it is pretty points intensive. Those Inceptors are not cheap. So you have to be very careful with them. You cannot lose them. But holy crap, are they good.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked before. I mean, Vanguard does something very similar to what I talked about with Firestorm in our last video. Is like, to your point, you cannot lose them, and if you can keep that unit chugging, like if you can get 3 activations out of a Bolter Inceptor unit, 6-man Bolter Inceptor unit, shoot it once, find another way to shoot it, and then Overwatch with that unit. Hopefully, if you've got Gillen, maybe you have 2 oath targets. I don't know. You oath unit that you're hoping to Overwatch. Like, that can just nail in the coffin someone right there. Like, it's a strong unit. And in this attachment, super strong.
All right, 3 for 3. Next one is Calculated Feint. 1 unit that was declared as the target for an enemy's charge. You can move D6 or 6 inches if it's a Phobos or a Scout Squad. So D6 or 6 after a charge, which means you could make it unchargeable.
You could.
Now, there's a stipulation, just so everyone understands. If you put yourself in a position where the target is no longer capable of charging, you can reselect. So what a lot of individuals will do is they will make it a 12-inch charge. Maybe they'll like go behind the wall and be an inch off the wall, and now it becomes a 12-inch charge. It's still an eligible charge. You can still get there, but I'm not going to let you reselect, and you're going to have to make this 12-inch charge into me. And the majority of the times I see this used is on, honestly, Scout Squads. It's so good on them. Like, they are your screening units, and this just gives them another layer of survivability that in any other detachment they're not going to have.
Yeah, or it protects your space that you're trying to take up in Vanguard. You're trying to be spread out and take up space, and it helps protect that. It helps protect a lot of times like somebody crashing into your backfield down to your home objective. And it can help protect other units too, your precious units, making, if a combo charge, making it an impossible charge. So if you're looking into combo charging against Marines, if you're playing against Marines, when you're playing into Vanguard, you have to have 2 threats lined up. You have to charge with one, that charge is going to fail, and then you'll be able to make your second charge. But that's the power of Vanguard as well, is now you're making people commit to units to doing the same thing. And so, yeah. So what are we now? 4 for 4? Is that where we're
4
at?
for 4.
Super good. Yeah.
Yep. Moving on down, we got surgical strikes in the fight phase. 1 Adeptus Astartes infantry unit from your army that has not been selected to fight until the end of the phase. Melee weapons equipped by the models in your unit have the precision ability. Is this one gonna make it? I don't know.
Lane, you ruined
Precision?
it. You ruined it. We were 4 for 4, and now we're not. Yeah. So I don't think so. The times it
2
it comes
CP.
up
I should
2
mention.
CP, which is ludicrous, I think. There's other stratagems that should be 2 CP in this detachment, but this one being 2 CP, there are situations very good. Situationally, it's a good stratagem. Genius of the Cults for 1,
You want to kill my characters? Ridiculous.
great stratagem.
You're picking on the little boys on the block. I have 3 wounds.
Is that worth 2 CP?
I think the big one is the Wraith Blob. In which detachment is it for Necrons? Where they reanimate their race, and back in the day, that's where this would be coming super clutch, because you just kill that character and now they're not effectively resurrecting their race or bringing them back. And so that was one of the biggest uses for this when that was a thing. So situationally, can be clutch, can be the thing you need to be effective. Maybe, nope, don't use it against Marnius. You'll have 4 Feel the Pain. You'll have a bad day. Maybe, but yeah.
There's niche uses for it. 2 CP feels kind of rushed, kind of tough. But once again, you have Marnius. It makes everything feel just a little bit better.
Yeah.
You're definitely taking Marnius in this detachment, just so everyone understands.
Yeah, you don't have a choice. Actually, you don't have a choice in most of the build. There is a build, and it's amazing. But Marnius is the first of that list. Like almost every detachment, you just put him up there and say, "What else am I bringing?"
Yeah. All right. 4 for 5. Lane ruined it. We almost had
It's
a 6
always
for
my
6.
fault. It's always
It's
my
always
fault.
almost
Lane's
had a
fault.
6 for 6. Perfect detachment. But the last one is the best one.
Yes.
Everything else is okay. It's good. It's really good. But
Mhm.
this detachment is made with this one stratagem. Guerrilla tactics, end of your opponent's fight phase, up to 2 Phobos and or scout squads from your army or 1 other Adeptus Astartes infantry unit from your army. Remove those units from the battlefield and place into strat reserve. Each unit selected for this stratagem must be more than 3 inches away from all enemy models. That is so important. Okay? So important. It is not engagement range for this specific uppy down. There are pickup stratagems and army rules that just say engagement range. They just say if it's outside of engagement range, you're good. But this one says specifically you have to be outside 3 inches.
Yeah, which means there's 1 unit this goes on. You're using most of the time. Now, you might be picking up Inceptors or other things when needed. 1 unit is a 6-man. I think always a 6-man. I know Roddy has done 3-mans, but I think it's a 6-man of Centurion Devastators. And you get the angles on people and they cannot interact with your most killy unit in this detachment. And they don't even need Oath in this detachment. They can kill, they have inbuilt rerolls and they are super strong. So that makes this detachment, the Centurion squad, even through all of its points nerfs. And I think it's fine. Don't touch it. Games Workshop, it's fine. Ways to play against it. And Roddy, from that interaction with Ben at LVO, I remember Ben knew Vanguard so well that he was doing some things against Roddy that, I hadn't even thought about. But one of them, to interact with this, you don't even need to interact with those Centurions once they're down. Ben was putting something within that 3, right? Putting something to stop their uppy downy now. He doesn't even have to interact with them now. I can just move out of their sidelines. I know where they're going to be next turn. And I think he did it with a Gladius assassin or something, on the other side of the wall, and said, like it was a rapid ingress or something like that, moved it in and said, now, you can't pick them up. And now you have the problem with Centurions. They move 4 inches. And so they got great guns, but they can't get lines, and they're huge, clunky bases and all this kind of stuff. They can barely move through a wall, just one of them. And so knowing that as like a counter to it too, but knowing that if you're going to play it, like that is one of the, it's like one of the only ways to stop this unit is to not let it up down on you.
One of the other things I remember Roddy mentioning about, learning from that is using Uriel Ventress's Deep Strike to help give them even more lines so they're not just coming in off the board edge.
Yeah, that's talking about the specific build. This is where Uriel Ventress shine. Uriel already brings it all to the table for points, the Vectora, giving a unit Deep Strike, but in this specific detachment, being able to give those Centurion Devs Deep Strike. And the fact that now they have Deep Strike makes them even more of a threat because they don't have to rely on strategic reserves. They can be anywhere on the table and they can get the line they need to get. I agree, Phil.
Yeah, no. I
strongest
think
build.
One. I think
strongest
for
build, for sure.
If I give you, just for those watching, you might be saying, okay, well, I want to run it. It is a high skill cap army. It has a great ceiling. The better you are as a player, the more that list gives you and that army detachment gives you as a player. Because if you are able to wield that thing like a scalpel, you will just be uninteractable in terms of your opponent actually being able to get after you. Because those Centurions and everything else like that are rough. They are rough. So normally, 2 squads of infiltrators. They screen out your backfield really well. One of them's going to have a Phobos Librarian. So you're going to have an untargetable one innately, and then you're going to have a normal infiltrator unit that's going to be kind of screening out your home. I like it. It feels very good for as much mobility as you have. It allows you to have safe areas that you're always going to be able to deep strike and kind of get those angles. Second thing that a lot of people will be running, and I think is just mandatory, Combi Weapon Lieutenant. We already said what we're taking. We're putting a Vectora on him. You're taking a Combi Weapon Lieutenant no matter what. If you don't take the Vectora, is what it is. I think you're missing out on the opportunity to have 3 Vectoras, but I definitely value it highly, and a Combi Weapon Lieutenant is good. 1 to 2 scout squads. You gotta run at least 1. I would not be upset with someone running 2. I think they're good. You could run 2 squads of 3 Bolter Inceptors or a squad of 6. I do think with the +1 to wound and the reroll hits, Bolter Inceptors are just straight up better. They're better into more targets because they have access to the +1 to wound. They have access to the additional AP. They are scary. They are frightening. You are definitely running Uriel. You are definitely running Marnius Kelgar. You are definitely running potentially a company of heroes. I don't think that's wrong. But if you notice, I haven't said any vehicles. So like the good Space Marine vehicles, the Lancers, Repulsor Executioners, Gladiator Reapers, like Vindicators, they're not in this list. That is not the money in this list. The money in this list is the Inceptors, it's the Centurions, and then it's how well you can frickin' score, because all your units are incredibly tough to interact with.
Yeah, I think adding to that, especially on skill cap level, Vanguard is really trying to take space, but with fragile units. So you need to know how to do it. And you need to know how to shut people down on what they want to do if you're going to run it. And so you want to spread out as Vanguard, which usually in Marines, you want to be all clumped together and be kind of castle-ish. A lot of builds or a lot of, players will run Marines that way. But Vanguard's a spread out kind of list. You want to take up space. You want to say, I can get the angles, you can't. And then on top of that, talking about it's trying to outscore your opponent, both on primary and secondary. But one way you can do that too, I've seen even in vehicles, Ben will run 1 impulsor. And I know he'll just hide that impulsor, pretty much keep it safe till you bring it down and be like, okay, well, that's a dead draw for you. And then you throw it away and like, okay, now my impulsor is going to go score points for me. And it's going to be reasonably tough to deal with. Like you have to put something into it. So like it is like you need that high understanding of the game to be able to run it well. But if you're there, it's amazing. Well, the last caveat is you need Centurion devs, and they look like butt. So a little hard to sign up to that train. Like, oh boy.
They are not the most
attractive
your
model.
favorite model collection, Centurion devs.
I don't run this. When I saw Ben brought it back, like it was October, I think, I know he was running it, but he showed up to the October GT with it. And I looked at his list, and I was running something different. And it was after a bunch of point changes. And I was like, that list looks fun. We got company heroes now. We got all this stuff. Like, it just looks so fun. And I think he's got and it was as soon as Uriel got his Vectora. I'm like, oh man, that looks so cool. Now we've got all these Vectoras, oh man, so cool. And I still haven't got the 6 Centurion divs because I can't even think of a cool conversion for them. I don't know what to do with them. And then I'm afraid they're going to go to Legends next edition. So I'm just having a hard time with it. But it is a great list, and it's a very cool list. You're going to play the game very differently than most armies do.
Seems pretty good.
Seems pretty good.
All right, so we've gone over 3 detachments. We've gone over list recommendations in terms of what units to take, the stratagems, the enhancements, but we talked about 3 good detachments previously, like Ironstorm, Firestorm, and Anvil, all have their place. And I will point out, according to the data right now, Anvil Siege Force is the highest win rate at 54%, which is crazy to me. Crazy. But Gladius is up there. Vanguard is at 45%, which is right within the GW window of what they consider to be a balanced army, 45 to 55%. So it is considered balanced, but I will tell you, in the hands of an excellent player, it is very good.
Yep. Yeah. And a small comment to what you were saying. I think that's somewhat, the stats are weird with Marines right now. As someone who's very good at Marines, they're a very good army. You're seeing them win tournaments. You're seeing them, do very decently. But they're not actually, I don't think, even though it is the beginning army, I don't think Marines are too beginner friendly. And like, you need to know how to play the game to run Marines. Now, if you have Marines, just put in the reps and get there, because they are an awesome army and they're super fun. But like, I think that's why the stats, like, I think Vanguard could be, super high up there in win rate. But I think a lot of people are trying to emulate what Ben Neal has done and what John Lennon created with his list. And we don't see it as ran to such success. You won't see it ran the same way. And it's not the same list when it's not ran the same way. It can be a pretty easy list to deal with, ran wrong. So yeah. The stats are weird with Marines for sure.
Yeah, that is very fair. I know a lot of people always talk about Guard always having a bunch of more casual players just ruining our statistics, and so we get to be stronger than a lot of other people. So
yeah, yeah. Maybe I'm just tooting the same horn everyone's tooting. Like, maybe that's it. Yeah. Well, yeah. Gene Stealer Colts could be the best.
Nope. No one plays Gene Stealer Cult. It is a very low player count army. Now, you bring a good point though. Like, Warhammer 40k has these ebbs and flows of like, okay, this army is really good and it has a high player base, so now we see this, like, it could be a high win rate, but because it's got such a high player base, it gets knocked down a little bit because just in terms of density of players, right? Not everyone is going to go, 4-2, 5-1, 6-0 at these big tournaments. So, they go 3-3, they go 2-4, like, maybe good players, but they're not as good as the top Space Marine players, so they get knocked down a peg or two, which is tough when you have such a high player pool. And Space Marines are definitely the love child of GW, and they are supported well, and they have all the detachments and the units, and they do all these things that are great. It's just they don't get a relevant win rate sometimes because of that.
I think so. Yeah. So if I can say anything, Games Workshop quit coming out with Marine models so I can catch up. For like a year, just stop with the Marine models. My God, like, give it a break. I would like to play with the toys I have, not the toys I need. My God.
The never-ending cycle of a Space Marine player, for sure. Awesome. Yeah, well, I think that's it. We always, appreciate you coming back on. It's always good to talk some more Space Marine with you. Until next time, everybody, thanks for coming. And don't forget that victory isn't given, it's forged.
Thanks for having me.